This year's graduation ceremony marks not only a milestone for all of our graduates, but also for the school. We recently introduced our first undergraduate major, and today we celebrate our very first Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy graduates. See, you blend in so well, I can't even find you in the crowd. Where are you? Hands up, right there. Good. I want to personally congratulate you and thank you for being those trailblazers. There will be many who come after you. We couldn't be prouder of our first group of graduates as Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy graduates. This year's BA in Public Policy students have selected Mr. Omari Lemmie to represent them in today's ceremony. Mr. Lemmie hails from Baltimore, Maryland. He first began studying social change as part of the Justice and Legal Thought Scholars program. He then participated in the Rawlings Undergraduate Leadership Fellows program and became one of our first students to join the inaugural class of Public Policy undergraduate majors. He served as a new student orientation advisor and ambassador for both scholars and the School of Public Policy, and as a member of the social entrepreneur group in Ecuador. That's the country, Ecuador. Mr. Lemmie plans to use his policy education and his passion for storytelling to raise consciousness through film and television. Mr. Lemmie, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and congratulations to the graduates and to everyone who helped us get here. I feel incredibly honored to have the opportunity to speak on behalf of the first undergraduate cohort of public policy. I'm going to take the next few minutes to reflect on the experience and to articulate some of the lessons that we learned throughout the journey. One of the staples of my undergraduate career was telling people my major, watching them nod with a look of intrigue and slight confusion, and then having to explain the difference between public policy and related fields. Which isn't super surprising. I couldn't have provided a solid definition of public policy until a few years ago. And it's still not the simplest thing to do, but I have gotten better at it with practice. So first, there is quite a bit of overlap with other subjects, but what separates policy is the connections that we make. In an effort to find solutions to our society's most persistent problems, we study principles related to government and economics, we look at different types of philosophy, we collect and analyze data, we think about what's behind human behavior, and we seek to understand cultural perspectives. That's a lot, and it's all necessary. Because ignoring the human component and just thinking of people as statistics doesn't help the ones who are never really given a chance. And while contextualizing problems is very important, there are millions of people currently hurting, and they need solutions. In addition to making these connections, we were taught to acknowledge counterarguments, to think about the feasibility of our proposed solutions, to write concisely and persuasively, to recognize credible sources and cite them, all of which is necessary for effective policy analysis, but these things are also important life skills, especially right now. But what's most important, I think, is that we learn to engage in informed and honest dialogue. And we created a space where people could speak and ask questions without being judged. We learned that resisting the natural urge to avoid topics that make us uncomfortable is precisely what's needed, to grow and to be sure that we aren't unknowingly standing in the way of progress. I still randomly think about some of the things that my classmates said. Sometimes it was new information that broadened my perspective, and other times I was just impressed by the clarity with which someone articulated a familiar feeling or idea. Either way, a lot stayed with me. Esther was still talking about the Puerto Rico recovery effort long after the news coverage had stopped. If I'd been getting all of my information from cable news, I might have assumed everything was fine now. My biggest takeaway from this experience is that there's absolutely nothing like talking to someone who's actually impacted by an issue. Hearing young women talk about all the things they go through on a day-to-day basis was also eye-opening for me. Some people are scared of what's going to happen when strong women bring awareness to reality. That's especially evident right now. One of the things I feel most fortunate about is that I've been surrounded by strong women throughout this journey, because now I'm even more certain that rooms full of old men shouldn't be regulating women's bodies, and that violence against women wouldn't be nearly as prevalent if men held each other accountable. Our classes force us to think about why we believe the things we do, and to learn about the experiences that shape the views of others. Maybe places like the Thanksgiving table should continue to be politics-free zones, but we do need to carve out some time to talk about what's going on. Because policy has real implications, and if we aren't thinking about them, it's likely that at least some people will end up suffering. It's then a matter of who gets hurt and how much we as a society care about those people. When my classmates and I talked about the issues, we weren't saying, oh, well, they're just like that, or they're crazy or stupid or overly sensitive. Those statements are cop-outs. They're intellectually lazy and counterproductive. Each one of us knows that there is no they, there's only us. We learn the importance of recognizing and appreciating the humanity of whomever we're engaging with, even if we disagree. We studied the atrocities that have occurred throughout the course of history, not to point fingers or to make anyone feel bad about things that happened before they were born, but so that we could understand the harm that's been caused by mental shortcuts and apathy, and so that we can see once and for all that has always been empathy, understanding, and compassion that's moved us forward. We looked at people that changed the world for the better, not to put them on a pedestal or use their quotes every once in a while, and certainly not as an excuse to pretend that the issues they were fighting for have been entirely solved. We understand that they were passionate, talented, flawed human beings, quite a bit like ourselves, who decided they didn't like what they were seeing in the world. There's religious diversity within our group, but I think we all have similar beliefs about why we're here. It's not to run from difficult or uncomfortable situations. It's not to posture and try to seem more impressive than the people around us. It's not to make money at the expense of others. It's to figure out how our unique talents and abilities can be best used to positively impact our surroundings. Some might call this cliche, but it's love that gets us there. People were kept separate to discourage the sharing of ideas. So each time we came together to discuss past and current events or even just life experience, we honored everyone that made this possible. It's a shame that caring about problems of another group puts a person at risk of being ostracized from their own. But in the space that we worked to create, we were all each other's allies. And on a less esoteric note, this program provided us with a place to fully nerd out and talk about things like renewable energy and restorative justice. It's a beautiful thing. Whether we were venting about our dissatisfaction with the current state of the world, or respectfully disagreeing about solutions, or collectively regretting putting off assignments, we were benefiting from the little bit of light that we created for ourselves in what seemed like a pretty dark time. An underappreciated part of the change-making progress is allocating some time for joy. We did that by showing each other pictures of our pets, by going out, by sharing funny stories. One of my biggest regrets is that we didn't make the group chat earlier, because it's things like that that make life a little less hard. Though we've all become somewhat desensitized to violence, the compassionate among us never really get used to waking up to news notifications about atrocities that could be entirely avoided if more lawmakers were willing to use common sense. Sometimes we felt like we were stuck on the sidelines at a pivotal point in history. Personally, I'm not sure how I would have dealt with the frustration had I not had this sort of support system. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about the audacity of this younger generation. Perhaps certain criticisms are valid, though I'm confident we'll work through the kinks in time. But what deserves to be celebrated is that many of us have reached a consensus that all people are actually equal. We're using new technologies to learn about each other, and we're ready to face history head on. We're envisioning a better future for all of us, a time when selfless educators are actually provided with the tools they need to shape our youth, and no one is at risk of being harmed while merely trying to exist in a public space, a time when we prioritize our planet and its inhabitants over profit, and where we all take a stand against problems that will never touch us. It's important to know that there is always opposition to the truth, to know that some people who benefit from the current status quo will question our motives, and to know that we're all part of a bigger plan. I'll begin to wrap this up with a lesson that Dr. Harris taught me in regards to my own life, but that also applies here. There's no going back. This is all part of the story now. So what are we going to do next? I don't have all the answers. More than anything, this experience has taught us how to go about finding them. I know that it involves listening, reading, thinking out loud, questioning what we think we know, unlearning, remaining patient while rejecting complacency, and communicating our findings as clearly, deliberately, and kindly as possible. I know that the divisiveness and the nastiness that we're seeing right now is temporary because we're all committed to doing that. So this was preseason, boot camp, practice, whatever you want to call it. If we weren't ready, we wouldn't be here right now. So really, it's just a matter of time. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for allowing me to remain optimistic. Better days are coming, and I look forward to getting there with all of you. Congratulations again.